Hello, welcome to another episode of History in the Dark. I am your host, Darkness the Curse. And before we begin, as always, thank you so much to my generous patrons, my British rail critics, and of course my underwater train finders. You are the reason why this content remains Big Chungus. And today, we are going to discuss heavy things again. But instead of locomotives, we're talking about airplanes. What are the heaviest airplanes ever to fly? And it's pretty alarming to think about how heavy some of these aircraft can be. I mean, they fly, and yet some of them weigh more than locomotives. Now, I want to preface this with the fact that I'm going to be doing this list when it comes to proper, traditional airplanes. If I didn't, I could also include the Caspian Sea Monster, the KM, but that's not really a plane in the traditional sense. It's a ground effect vehicle. It would be on this list if I did include it, but because it would be on a list with more traditional, proper airplanes that fly, like, high in the sky, it just seems too different and unique to put it on this list. But I wanted to mention it anyway because it did weigh a lot. Additionally, I also want to stress that whenever I'm talking about the weights of these planes, I'm referring to their maximum takeoff weight, MTOW, not their empty weight. The reason I chose to go by this is that the empty weight is relevant, but sometimes if you put two planes together, one can weigh less on the ground empty, but weigh way more when it's fully loaded. It depends on the design, and I decided I wanted to go with the heaviest possible variable when considering these things actually flying, and that would be their MTOW, because that's the heaviest they can possibly be and still get off the ground. So with all that out of the way, here's 5 of the heaviest airplanes ever. The Lockheed C-5 Galaxy. I am so excited I get to talk about this plane, and it's actually my favorite cargo plane ever. I've seen these things fly before, and my goodness, these things are just big chungus. They're huge, enormous pieces of equipment. Absolutely phenomenal to see take to the sky. They served the United States Air Force since June of 1970. Manufactured by Lockheed, it first flew on the 30th of June 1968. And it's still in service now. And with upgrades, now calling it the C-5M Super Galaxy, they intend to keep it in service till at least 2040. Development on the C-5 did not go smoothly, though. It was a difficult plane to get working, with tons of cost overruns, which is a story we've heard often enough when it comes to aircraft development, but boy howdy was the C-5 expensive. And the first round of them actually weren't very good. They suffered cracking in their wings, and Lockheed had to go back to the drawing board in the mid-70s to try to fix the C-5's problems. That being said, most have been worked out these days, and there's a reason they're still in service. Even as cargo planes go, they're massive and can be loaded from the front or the back, able to transport equipment that other planes would never ever be able to get off the ground. But how much weight is that exactly? Well, its maximum takeoff weight is a ludicrous 417 tons. But this is only number 5. Everything else from here is even heavier. The Boeing 747-8. Ooh, the 747! We like 747s, one of the most successful commercial airliners ever produced. The Dash 8, however, decided to go just a little bit bigger. The Dash 8 is the largest variant of the 747, and the freight model first flew on February 8, 2010, and first entered service with Cargo Lux on October 12, 2011. They've been pretty good, all things considered, as 747s tend to be. And of course, since it's on this list, it also happens to be extremely heavy. Its maximum takeoff weight is 448 tons. Apparently Boeing's trying to lift the entire country off the ground, but other companies can still go heavier. The Airbus A380. Oh, Airbus. Of course it's Airbus. Never content in their never-ending mission to be better than Boeing, Airbus, of course, has an aircraft that can lift more than the 747-8. Not that I blame them, Airbus has done some pretty solid work over the years, and the A380 was specifically designed to challenge the 747 in the long-haul market. This thing actually predates the Dash 8, first flying on the 27th of April 2005, and first introduced on the 25th of October 2007. Including the test aircraft, 254 of these things have taken to the skies, and their ability to lift things shouldn't be questioned. They kind of have a pregnant guppy look to them because Airbus extended the fuselage up instead of down, unlike with the 747 and the C-5, which just raised the cockpit and moved the cargo space below. The cockpit of this plane stays in relatively the same location it would be on a smaller jet and raises the fuselage up to give it more room. How much weight can this thing take off with? 575 tons! That's over 100 tons more than the 747-8. That's a steep jump. And no, we're not done yet. This is only number 3. Why are you even questioning it at this point? The Scaled Composites Model 351 Stratolaunch. This is just called the Rock, or some people call it the Stratolauncher. This extremely unique aircraft is one of a kind, and its first flight was pretty recent, April 13th, 2019. As you can see, it has twin fuselages, something that hasn't been done too often in the history of aircraft design. Though large aircraft with 2 fuselages have entered the drawing board stages, nothing like this has ever really been built. If an aircraft did have 2 fuselages, and there were a few, they were on a much smaller scale. But the Rock is enormous. It has the longest wingspan of any aircraft that has ever flown, at 385 feet, 117 meters. Now this thing is a cargo transport, but it was meant for a very specific purpose. It was supposed to launch rockets into space, specifically, at least initially, the Falcon 9 Air by SpaceX. Launching a rocket like this was theorized a lot over the decades since rockets first came into being, but it was only in the 2010s that people started seriously actually attempting to do it. There are significant advantages to doing it this way, mostly from a fuel-saving perspective. It's easier to launch a rocket that's already high in the air, rather than launching it from directly on the ground. You don't need as much fuel. It's just simple as that. Though it's never launched a space vehicle, as it's barely flown itself. The Stratolaunch company was founded by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, but he passed away in October of 2018. Allen had been the source of funds for the project from the get-go, and without other investors, they had to halt development in January of 2019. May of that same year, they announced they would cease operations, and sale of their assets was being explored. By October 11th, they did fall under new ownership, which turned out to be a company called Cerberus Capital Management LP, which is an American private equity firm specializing in distressed investing. Also, am I the only one who finds that company's name and method of operation just insanely sinister? I mean, this is their corporate headquarters apparently. I mean, I don't know much about them beyond this, but this is some supervillain stuff we got going on here, I'm just saying. Stratolaunch's focus now is offering high-speed flight test services, but the Rock is still being worked on. It flew again on April 29th, 2021, and a third time on January 16th, 2022. It then flew a fourth time on the 24th of February 2022, but hasn't taken to the skies since as far as my sources are concerned. This plane is also the reason why I wanted to go with maximum takeoff weight, as empty, it's actually lighter than the A380, but its maximum takeoff weight would not suggest that. This thing can take off with a weight of 590 tons. Absolutely insane, but very impressive, and maybe someday it'll be allowed to do what it was meant to do, and I do think the idea is promising, but with their new ownership being a little bit shady, I don't know if I trust the future of this thing. Everything just seems so mysterious and questionable when it comes to where this thing is going to go from here. Paul Allen used a lot of his insane wealth to try to push science forward, not necessarily to make money. He suffered nothing but losses when it came to this project. He just wanted to see it happen. I can't imagine Cerberus Capital Management having a similar mindset. It's just an inkling, but I'm not sure that under them the Rock will ever reach its full potential. And it's kind of sad. The Antonov AN-225 Mriya. Okay, so every single plane spotter watching this already knew what the number 1 pick was going to be, because of course it is! The Mriya is legendary among fans of aviation in general. What you're looking at is what once was, more on that in a second, the heaviest aircraft ever to take to the skies. It was first produced in 1985 and only one was built. They planned to make more, but they never did, because frankly they were very expensive, and there wasn't much of a purpose for them at the time. The initial development on the Antonov AN-225 would begin in 1984, due to a request from the Soviet government. The Soviets were working on their own spaceplane, the Buran, to rival America's space shuttle, and they needed something that could, well, transport it, and there really wasn't anything that they had at the time that could comfortably do that. The Antonov Design Bureau eventually came up with the AN-225. It first flew on the 21st of December 1988, and it was displayed on multiple air shows, as, frankly, its size was unprecedented. It was incredibly impressive. They were in the middle of working on a second one when the Soviet Union collapsed, leaving the Mriya being the only one of her kind. The second one is still in pieces, stored by Antonov. Well, the Buran program, Mriya just didn't have a purpose. That was the whole point of building it. So it sat in storage for many years. Officials from Antonov expressed interest in possibly putting it into commercial use. This didn't actually materialize until the late 90s into the 2000s, when she was re-engined and given some modifications. Mriya received her type certificate on the 23rd of May 2001, and her first flight in commercial service took place on the 3rd of January 2002. She's been legendary not just for her own size, but for the fact that she can carry things that people just genuinely would never have believed that an airplane could transport. This could include wind turbine blades and diesel locomotives. Seriously. And how heavy was she? Oh, you know, maximum takeoff weight of 640 tons! If you wanted to transport the sun, Mriya could probably pull that off. She did not care. She held many records and was very popular among the plane spotting community. A beautiful aircraft with a legendary reputation, but why do I keep talking about her in the past tense? Well, this is where the story gets kind of sad. Doubtless most of you are aware of the current situation between Russia and Ukraine. Now, I don't want to get into that situation in too much detail right now, since it's kind of history in the making, not so much history in general if you get my meaning. But unfortunately, in addition to all the other horrible things happening in the war, one thing the Ukrainians lost was Mriya. During the Battle of Antonov Airport, a missile strike hit the hangar where Mriya was sitting, destroying the aircraft beyond repair. On the 27th of February 2022, her loss was confirmed by Antonov, and seeing a once beautiful aircraft utterly destroyed broke the heart of many plane spotters all over the world. But there may still be hope. Mriya means dream in Ukrainian, and many officials, both in the Ukrainian government as well as in Antonov, have expressed interest in, once the war's over, to building her again. Remember I said that they were in the middle of building a second one, back in the early 90s when that wound up being cancelled. Those components still exist, and it's not too much of a stretch to believe that they could still be built into a brand new Mriya. We're probably quite a few years away from figuring that out for sure, but it's definitely something that both Antonov and the Ukrainian government want to do. So while the Queen of the Skies, Mriya, may be gone, someday, perhaps her little sister will fly in her place. Because that's the nice thing about dreams. They're never really dead. And with that, a special thank you goes to all my underwater train finders. Thomas Ward, Somedude267, Orange Glass, Royal Hudson 2860, Lord Hoth 444, Benjamin Owens, Panzer Consume 131-232, Mr. Black Rose, Master of None, Josh Johnson, Metal for Life Guy, Anzac A1, Arthur Roy, DM Trouble Typhoon, Tommy Rossini, Ohio Trucker 1, Lord Captain Von Thrust III, Joshua Long, Alaric Jaspers, Brian P., Jack Carson's Railroad Videos, Major Klutz, and Ty Hammonds Jr. Till next time, this is Darkness, and a bid you all a fond farewell.